Are you ready for a spicy podcast episode today? I'm not going to hold back, but let me add a disclaimer. All that I'm going to share today is purely my opinion. You and we can differ. These are not issues that mean much outside of the homeschool world, and it might not even mean much out of your immediate family. The only thing is, you need to do what's best for your family, and I'm going to do what's best for my family. So, this is just my take on some of the hot topics and some of the questions that go around in the homeschool world from what I have learned just in the past 13 years. So, buckle up, please. Put your big girl pants on. I'm going to keep my big girl pants on too. And we are going to just talk about it and not get offended. And hopefully, at the end of this episode, we've just have had some fun together. Let's do this right now.
Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening.
The thing, you might not know this about me, but I am very opinionated. Here on the podcast, I just keep my opinions. I might put a little bit out there, but I keep it to myself because that is not the focus. This podcast is not about me, it is about you. And I want to provide you with information because all of us are unique individuals. God has created us all uniquely. We all have opinions. Some of us have opinions about a lot of things. Some of us have opinions about a little things, and some of us don't really have many opinions at all. And it's okay how God has created you. God created me to have a lot of opinions and more opinions as I've gotten older. And guess what? I have passed that on to my 3 children. My mom said to me years ago, so even when my youngest was probably early elementary, she said, "Your kids are the most opinionated people I have ever met." But she didn't stop there. She goes, "But it's okay. Every single opinion they have backed up with some information and why." And so I thought that was so fun. We still joke about her saying that because she agrees. The older they are, the more opinionated they get. But it doesn't mean that having these opinions means that we stay solid in one spot and it is immovable. So just know these are the opinions that I have formed about the homeschool world after watching it and being in it for 13 years. And again, it's just purely my opinion. So I want to have a little bit of fun with this, show you what I've seen and what I have experienced and just my view on it. So, all right, let's dive in. And as I look at my list, I see that there are 9 things listed here that I want to talk about, 9 different topics. And I'm going to tell you right now, I have no notes, nothing written next to them. So I'm going to be just kind of talking off the cuff and we'll see what comes out. Again, let's have a little bit of fun with this and just gonna kind of share my perspective and my experience with these. And don't get offended, okay? We're having a good time right here. And you might be some of these might be like, yeah, all right. And some of you might be like, oh, that kind of hurts my feelings. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. Please stick around. Don't stop listening to the podcast episode or overall, just knowing that this is where I've come to. And you have your own opinions and your friends have their own opinions and you don't stop talking to them because their opinion about something is different, especially when it comes to homeschool stuff. Again, this is just homeschool. It's a big part of your life, but overall, it's not going to determine your salvation or anything like that. Let's start with, oh, they're all a little bit spicy. Well, let's start with co-ops. I did do an episode way back, and I will drop that link for that one in the show notes. What are my thoughts on co-ops? Now, some curriculum, let's just say that it serves its consumers, it serves the children best when it is done together in a co-op. So I am not knocking co-ops, but I'm going to tell you right now that if you are not in a co-op, you don't have the option of a co-op, it's okay. You don't have to go to a co-op. Let's say the first thing that people always ask about when they're going to homeschool is what curriculum do I get? And the second one is what co-op do I join? And I have opinions about the second question. Like that, that's not even an option. Part of what you are doing with homeschooling, part of what I see, the mission for myself and my family with homeschooling was to do our life, to do what we want to do and not feel beholden to a specific group. Now, this doesn't mean that we have not done co ops. We have done co ops. Our very first year of homeschool. So, look, I'm going to throw this out and tell you the first year of homeschool, that was my questions. What curriculum do I use? And where can I go to a co op? Because surely I cannot do this by myself. If you are doing a co op because you don't think you can do it by yourself, that's probably not true. Some of us might need a little bit of help, and you might need to do a co op for a year. That's what I did. I did a co op for a year, and I realized I did not like having to be somewhere on a specific day at a specific time. One of the reasons we decided to homeschool was for freedom, so that we could come up with our own quote unquote schedule, our own routine, our own rhythm. We could do our own thing. I wanted to be independent, and I didn't want to have to do anything for this co op in between. I had to teach a class. I required my kids, my two oldest kids, the youngest one was in the preschool room, but I required my oldest two to do it with me because if I'm putting this much effort into it. And listen, I spent hours and hours and hours every single week for this co-op class. And I was like, this is time that I am losing with my kids. This is time that I am losing of having peace and calmness in my life. And so we did not go back to the co-op. It was great to be able to meet other homeschoolers because, again, I didn't know homeschool. I knew one homeschool family, and that was it. And so it was really good for us to get to know and realize, oh, there's some normal homeschool families out there. So it's okay. We did co-ops two other times. Let's see, it was okay. Later on, when my daughter was going into high school and she was doing biology in ninth grade. And so I did a co op because I was scared to do biology. I observed that class. I helped out a little bit and helped out more so with my younger kiddos class. So I watched it. And at the end of the year, even way before the end of the year, I was like, I could have done this at home, but I felt intimidated, like we can't do dissections. And so I didn't do it at home, but I did do it at home for my son, for my next child. I felt fully equipped to be able to do that. So sometimes we feel scared that we can't do something. And for me, when it comes to co ops halfway through the year, I am like, I'm ready to be out and done. So if you are not into co ops, it's okay. We did do a co op one other year, and it was just with my youngest, and that was for ninth grade. And you know what was my favorite part of it? Was that it was a drop off co op. Yes, I had to pay a little bit more money for it, but I didn't have to teach a class. He went, did two classes, and I picked him up. During that time, I used that time to run errands. And so, therefore, I didn't have to fit that in another time. So, to be honest, that was my favorite co op. But he was ninth grade. Like, it was okay. I knew he would be fine and cooperative. I could just drop him off. All right, next topic here is online school. I am not a fan of online school. Let's just put that out there. I am not a fan of taking a child out of public school and then just enrolling them full time into online school. Now, there are some scenarios. I do know of some families that where maybe they're co-parenting, there was a divorced parent got remarried and they want to be able to homeschool, and the other parent says, yes, you can do that, but it has to be an online school. I understand that there are some situations, and so this isn't what I'm talking about with that. I am talking about for the homeschool mom, for you, if you are feeling intimidated by actually teaching some of the subjects and just saying, well, we're just going to go from this to this. I see this all the time in Facebook groups, and I don't even answer anymore because I'm like, you're asking the wrong question. And I did do an episode about this too, and I'm gonna try to remember to drop it in the show notes. But just this question of like, I want to pull my kid out of school and I want to homeschool them. What's the best program? What's the best online school? That's not even it. Let's think about what education is. All right, next topic is hybrid schools, where a child will do some other education at a school and then they will do some at home. To me, it's a good in between. It can be a good in between for those that want to transition that don't feel like they can do it fully on their own. But honestly, there are not hybrid options in a lot of places. I've never had a hybrid option, and I hadn't even heard of this until a couple years ago. So a lot of us don't even necessarily have that option, and we might think to ourselves, man, I really wish that I had that option. And I did few years ago, probably about 5 years ago, when I was just deep in the trenches with all 3 kids and late elementary, middle, and high school, and I was feeling overwhelmed, and I was looking in to see if the local Christian school had some type of option. They did, and I was like, "Times 3 kids, it's not really gonna work, and it's different times of the day." I was like, "That's not really what I'm looking for." And so I understand that need to do that. For me then, I'm glad that it did not work out because part of the reason why we homeschool is because I want to decide who the influences are in my children's lives. So, and it does not mean that if you're doing hybrid school that you don't care about such things. But just for me, when it comes to homeschooling, I just want to fully embrace it. And we are doing this 24/7. We are doing it all days of the week, just us, and I get to decide what we are doing. I don't rely upon anybody else to decide what resources and textbooks and curriculum to use. Let's go into testing and grading here. Let's talk about testing first on a subject basis. So, let's say when it comes to math or science or history, and as you are going through and you're teaching the child something and then you give a test, you know what that looks like, right? In the school system, you experience that. You would complete maybe a couple days of homework, or every single week, you would have maybe a math test, or it would be like a new concept, and then you would have a test. Let's talk about that first. You know what I think about those? They're trash. Just trash. Throw it in the trash. Throw the test in the trash. To just memorize things to put on a test is so ridiculous. I had to memorize stuff to put on tests, and guess what? I remember it afterwards. In a lot of textbooks, let's start with the math. There are tests that are in there. I never once gave any of my children a test. Do you know what I used that test page for? No, I didn't throw it in the trash because you can actually redeem it. I used it as a review day. And I would maybe not necessarily give them all to do, or maybe I was like, you know what? We need 3 review days because there's maybe 45 problems on here. Let's break it up and let's do a certain amount every single day. And we just used it as a review, as a chance to just kind of let everything gel and solidify in their brain as they were learning new concepts. And so that even goes with, say, let's something else. Let's talk about when it comes to a subject like we were just talking about the last episode, skill subjects and content subjects. Let's talk about history. So maybe you study a certain time period and then you want your child to memorize. Listen, did you have to do this too? Memorize all the generals and the dates and the different places of the battles and the wars. I don't remember any of those. I would rather a child understand the reasons behind why did this happen and all of the political things and all of like the stuff is going on in back rooms when it comes to all of this stuff. Let them know that why. And you can tie in some psychology into that kind of stuff too. And that is way more fascinating. And that is what's going to stick with the child instead of just memorizing things and putting on tests. I never once administered a test in the way that you think of as school with tests. With all 3 of my kids, 2 have graduated, 1 has 2 more years to go. Never once did I do a test in the way that you would think of doing a test. Let's talk about testing in a grander scale as far as state standards and the testing that probably I assume every state, every school has to do in every state. That testing is tied to funding, and teaching is done in order to have the children do the best that they can on those tests. I do not believe that performing like that is actual education. That's not my definition of education. Did I have to do testing like that with my kids? Yes, I did. Because I've lived in 2 states that required that. And you know what I told my kids? I said to them, and we never prepared or anything for it. We would do the testing in the one state, I felt like I couldn't do it myself. I brought them somewhere to do the testing, and it was my daughter. It was the first year. I felt really scared to be able to do it, and it was a wonderful atmosphere. It was at a church, and it was moms that were administering the test, and it was wonderful. And I was like, afterwards, we'll go out to Chick-fil-A, which this is like before Chick-fil-A was anywhere. I think I had to drive like 20 miles afterwards or something to get to Chick-fil-A. We did something fun afterwards, but I told my kids all the way through because in high school, we have to do some state testing every single year towards the end of the year. And I just say to them, I need for you to do the best that you can do because that's what we do. We do the best in everything we're doing, whether it is a sports team or you are in some club or you are volunteering or ministering, whatever it is, your job, whatever. We do the best that we can. So let's do our best. And then I don't really care what the numbers say. So that's kind of how I approached it. And my kids did fine. We would do some type of celebration or something afterwards to say that we were done. Now let's talk about grading, giving kids grades, such as giving them an A, B, C, D, or F. And then, especially as the kids get older, giving them like a number, whether it's like a 95 or an 80 or a 72. Guess what? You want to know how many I gave those to my kids? You might have already guessed 0. Because guess what? Grades like that, it's trash too. Throw that in the trash. It's going to be the theme of today's episode. Throw it in the trash. That grading is ridiculous. If I wanted to compare 2 things, then yeah, okay, something like that would actually work, and it does work sometimes in the economy and when you are looking at 2 products and you wanna grade certain products, that's fine. But these are children. These are image bearers of God. We don't need to grade them against one another. And people might say, "Well, that's not grading against another, just grading against a specific metric." Well, guess what? I'm not going to grade my child against a certain metric. They either know something or they don't know something. When it comes to math, if they don't know their addition math facts, guess what? Giving them a C, a D, or an F on it doesn't help them. You know that they're not quite getting it. So you need to be creative in figuring out how can you reach them? How does their mind work best that you can teach them, say that addition math facts? There's no reason to give them a failing grade on something and then move on. I remember that in school, getting a failing grade in something, and then the teacher moved on because they couldn't do an individualized education for me. And that's understandable when you're in a classroom of 20 to 30 kids and there's one teacher. If you just didn't get it, you didn't get it. I remember in high school missing a day or two or a couple days. I was homesick and it was Spanish class. And we learned how in that time during those days that I was homesick, the teacher taught the class how to tell time and how to say that in Spanish. Guess what? I took many years of Spanish afterward, and I never learned how to tell time because I missed out on that. I just got that part wrong, and nobody pulled me aside because there's nobody to notice that I was consistently getting something wrong. So I don't remember a lot from Spanish anyway. So being able to tell time is the least of my problems when it comes to that. Okay, we've got 3 more. The next one is on being weird. Everyone's like, oh, homeschoolers are weird. Well, guess what? Everybody's weird, actually. Everybody's weird in some degree. And I think historically, maybe they would say, oh, homeschoolers were weird because maybe the families that were homeschooling originally were just themselves were a little weird, little off. They just didn't want to do what everybody else was doing. So therefore, that was called weird. And so sometimes they can get a bad rap of they're being weird. And the funny thing is, when people find out, my kids, especially as they have gotten older, maybe in middle school, high school, and they would interact with my child and then come back and say, oh, I didn't know that they were homeschooled. I was like, yeah, homeschoolers can be normal. But if your kid's weird, guess what? Maybe you should look in the mirror. You might be weird too. My kids are a little weird. I'm a little weird. You're weird. Embrace some of the weirdness. But I think just the overall, just the sentiment of saying that homeschoolers are weird. It's just, to me, it's an ignorant thing to say. It just means that you've got nothing else to say. All right, 2 more. These 2 are gonna, let's see. We'll see how these go. The next one is I hear, well, I'll read it mostly. And someone will start off a comment, especially in social media. And I don't know, I've never had anybody say this to my face because maybe it just isn't something that would come up, and I've interacted with a lot of homeschoolers that are coming at homeschooling and a reason for it for various different reasons. And no one has ever said this to me, but I see it in writing, especially in comments, or I might get a message, whether it's an email or through Facebook or Instagram, and they'll start it off and they'll say, I'm a secular homeschooler. Okay. I know exactly where they're going to go. They're going to have some type of specific issue. Well, guess what? I'm not a secular homeschooler. You can be a secular homeschooler. That's fine. But the term just kind of annoys me because if I had a problem with some type of content somebody put out, maybe they're on a podcast or a blog or YouTube, wherever, I'm not going to start off my comment. Actually, at this point in my homeschooling, I don't even care. I just whatever, it's water off a duck's back. I don't really care if that's your opinion, that's how you do it. Good for you and good for me to do it my way. But I don't start off and say, I am a faith-based homeschooler or I homeschool from a Christian worldview. Now, I might say that to somebody that I want to be very clear and say, this is they're also wanting to come from a biblical Christian worldview. And I'll say, I just want you to know that, we use that this curriculum comes from this point of view. But I don't know. Please don't be offended by this if you're a secular homeschooler, but I just feel like it's kind of a little bit of like sticking your nose in the air and just being like, well, I'm a secular homeschooler and we do it this way. And I don't appreciate that you're saying this. So maybe you have noticed this in the online world as well, but I don't get it when people are interact with me face to face, or even if it's like on a Zoom or some type of way. It's not ever in a verbal way. It's always in a written way. All right, we are going to end with kind of like if I had like what is it, like the drum, like, doo, doo. I don't know. I can't really do it. We're going to talk about foreign language. Is foreign language necessary for children? Now, you might be missionaries, you might be living in a foreign country, and yeah, it is. Let's just talk about the most of us that are listening to this podcast right now, that you're probably just living somewhere and the language that you speak, you're listening to this probably in English. I'm speaking in English, and you're probably listening to it in that, and that's probably your main language. Does your child need to learn a foreign language? Guess what I think? This is my opinion. Probably not. The thought of kids needing a foreign language goes back to school. When we were in school, and if you were on a college track, you had to learn a certain amount of foreign language because it would give you the foundation, the basis, in order to learn that foreign language in college. I took 4 years, I think, of Spanish in high school. I don't think I had to take 4 years. I think I was just as like, well, it'll look really great on my transcript if I have 4 years. And then I had to take 2 semesters in college in order to get my liberal arts degree. Now, that might be necessary and might give you a good foundation if your child is going on to a liberal arts degree. Please double check with some of the colleges that you're looking at to see. So, do kids need to learn a foreign language? To be honest, my opinion, and from what I have seen and what I have tried to do with my own kids, is that to learn a foreign language, the best way to learn a foreign language is from somebody who speaks that foreign language, that is their native language. Obviously, if you were to immerse yourself in another culture and to go there, you're going to learn it a lot faster and a lot better. And you're going to get all the little dialects and the nuances and everything that everybody is saying. And that's probably the best way. But let's just talk about you at homeschool. You are in the middle of nowhere, podink, homeschooling your kids and loving it, and you're feeling this pressure to have them do a foreign language. I'm going to take the pressure off of you. I live in a state that is strict, as I have mentioned, and they don't require any foreign languages for homeschool. Now, if my child was going to go on to liberal arts college and that was something they were going to have to do, instead of having to be introduced to it at that time, I would do some research, honestly, and see, is it hard to be introduced to it in college? I went from having 4 years and then went to just doing the two most basic, like Spanish 101 and Spanish 102, because I knew I wasn't going to do more with it. I just needed those credits in order to fulfill the foreign language credits for my degree. But I think as parents, we get so hung up on this. And I had my kids trying to learn from online courses, and guess what? They don't know any of it. And my two oldest have traveled, both of them, to different and multiple foreign countries, and they've been absolutely fine. There's this little thing called a computer in the palm of your hand with your phone, and there are apps that will actually translate for you. Again, if you are going to move to a foreign country, probably best to learn that foreign language instead of having to use that. But I have witnessed firsthand people using these apps and translating to each other, and the other person then speaks into it in their language and it translates to the other language. I think it is absolutely amazing. So if you are concerned about your child traveling and needing a foreign language, I don't really think that's a good reason to have to do it. And I think parents get so hung up on this is what they do in school, therefore I have to do this at home. There are going to be some kids who are going to really desire and want to learn a foreign language, and they're going to pick up on it really easily. Then I highly recommend that you do that because, again, this is an individualized education. And then you might have their younger sibling who has no interest. That's okay. They don't necessarily have to take it. So my issue, my opinion when it comes to the foreign language is that you have to do what you want to do and what you feel is best for each of your children. Don't do it just because you did it in school or that you see the kids that are down in the brick and mortar school, they're actually doing it. Don't do it because of that. Do it because it'd be something that would serve your child. All right, friends. I know this has been a spicy one and I've gone on a little bit here. Hopefully we are still good friends at this point. I kind of had a little fun with that. There's probably more that I could say. But just know, I do have opinions, but most of my opinions I kind of hold back because I want you to do what is best for you and your family with the homeschooling. In some of these opinions, you might actually do the opposite. If it's working for you, girlfriend, keep doing that, okay? But if you have any questions about these, please feel free to reach out and let me know. You can send me an email or actually, better yet, join the private Facebook group and you can go ahead and post there and say, hey, I just listened to episode 285 and Lee's talking about, let's say, hybrid schools. And what are your thoughts? Oh my goodness, that was only 8. I missed one. Okay, real quick. Traditional homeschooling. Somehow I skipped it. I went from hybrid to testing because I told you the number and you're counting. You're like, that's only 8. Traditional homeschooling, what's my opinion on it before I close out? Oh my goodness. Traditional homeschooling is when you just recreate school at home. And you might have figured out what my opinion is. A lot of us start off doing that because we don't know anything different. And if that's where you're at right now, I highly recommend that you think differently. Your homeschool blueprint is my resource that will help you to think differently and to create a homeschool that is going to work really well for you. So you can join that Facebook group that I mentioned. You can also join your homeschool blueprint. All of those links in the show notes. And I will see you back here on Little by Little Homeschool Podcast after the weekend.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.